When do you plan on leaving your parents' home? It's about time you grew up. My husband barged into my family home, his voice laced with anger. That should be my line. The one who's been ignoring me is you. I don't have an ounce of love left for my husband, I retorted, my patience wearing thin. What's up all of a sudden? After ignoring me for so long, he spat out, his face flushed with frustration. Since when did my wife get so cheeky? Don't get too carried away just because you're at your parents' house, he continued, his tone growing more crude by the moment. Surprised by his harsh words, I fell silent, taken aback by the sudden confrontation. You really are an idiot. Well, I'll let it slide this time, so hurry up and come home, he demanded, his exasperation evident in his voice. Despite his words, I had no intention of returning home. Don't misunderstand, our marital life is over, I declared defiantly, my resolve unwavering. What do you mean by that? You haven't heard anything from your mother-in-law. Well, let me tell you, he pressed, confusion evident in his tone. With a defiant smile, I revealed the truth to him. Jackson and I were married 2 years ago. We were both sales representatives at an electrical parts manufacturer in the same batch. We often went for drinks after work. Before we started dating, my husband would often say such things, and I felt the same way. That's probably why we were naturally drawn to each other and started dating. We didn't interfere with each other or act overly sweet, but he was someone I thought I could spend my life with. A year into our relationship, he proposed. Of course, I said yes. 3 months after the proposal, we got married, rented an apartment near our workplace, and began our life as newlyweds. I had no intention of having children just yet, so I didn't quit my job. Despite our marriage, my husband often neglected his responsibilities at home. I'm going out for a bit again. You should help with the cleaning once in a while, he would say, leaving me to manage everything alone. It saddened me that he didn't contribute more, but I tried not to dwell on it, believing it was just the role of a wife. However, as time passed, his absences grew more frequent, leaving me feeling neglected and unloved. One night, he returned home late, offering no explanation for his absence. Who were you drinking with? You were out quite late, I questioned, but he ignored me, retreating to the living room without a word. I knew better than to press him when he was in a foul mood, so I left him alone, hoping he would return to his usual self by morning. But the next morning, as I prepared breakfast, he showed no signs of remorse or explanation for his behavior. Good morning. Anything wrong yesterday? He asked casually, as if nothing had happened the night before. I attempted to engage in conversation with him as usual, but he merely cast a glance in my direction before wordlessly retrieving a bottle of water from the refrigerator and exiting the living room. His demeanor seemed off, unlike his usual post-sleep mood improvement. It was an unprecedented behavior that left me genuinely puzzled. 2 days passed with him not uttering a word to me. His prolonged silence hinted at a deep-seated frustration or anger. Uncertain of how to proceed, I opted to refrain from pushing him and chose not to initiate any conversations, hoping time would provide clarity. However, his mood remained unchanged, leaving me increasingly worried. This prolonged silence was uncharacteristic of our relationship, and I feared it signaled a rupture that might be irreparable. Desperate to communicate with him, I attempted various methods from messages to notes, all of which were met with disregard. Faced with dwindling options, I resorted to a drastic measure, omitting dinner preparation. It was a deliberate move, hoping it would compel him to address the situation. Yet even then, his departure from the house was marked by silence, leaving me stunned and questioning the depth of our marriage's hollowness. His absence that night left me in solitude, contemplating the state of our relationship. The following morning, as I speculated on his whereabouts, I discovered a note on the table, bearing words dripping with disdain. Do not slack off your duties as a wife. The audacity of his message, delivered amidst his prolonged silence, incited a wave of indignation within me. How could he expect adherence to marital responsibilities when he refused to engage in meaningful communication? The realization dawned that we hadn't shared a proper conversation in over a month, highlighting the chasm that had developed between us. As I laid eyes on the note, a surge of anger towards my husband erupted within me. I can't deal with this anymore. I can't bear it anymore. I'm going back to my parents' house, I muttered to myself, overwhelmed by the suffocating silence that had enveloped our relationship. Leaving those words beside my husband's scribbled note, I made the decision to return to my parents' home. After an hour's journey from the apartment we shared, I finally arrived, greeted by the shocked expressions of my parents. Emily, what in the world happened? They inquired, their concern evident. I explained the situation, and without hesitation, They welcomed me with open arms. Their kindness provided solace, offering a safe space where I could freely discuss my struggles. "Thank you. I think I'll stay here for a while and observe how things go with my husband," I expressed, grateful for their unwavering support. Back at our shared apartment, the anticipated communication from my husband never came. His silence spoke volumes, leaving me resolute in my decision to maintain distance until he made an effort to reach out. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was no word from him. I grew accustomed to his absence, focusing on rebuilding my own life. Half a year passed, and just as I was about to step out for some shopping, I opened the front door to find my husband standing there, his expression stern and determined. "Why are you here?" I blurted out, momentarily forgetting his existence. As he stood in silence, I braced myself for whatever he had to say, but to my surprise, he remained wordless, his glare speaking volumes. Realizing he was still playing his silent game, I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. I have nothing to say to him, I thought, wishing he would just leave. With that in mind, I attempted to leave for the store, but he silently moved to enter the house, further prolonging our silent standoff. "What? Wait, what are you doing?" "Stop." I hurriedly tried to prevent him from entering, but he simply regarded me with a perplexed expression, as if unable to comprehend my actions. "Don't just barge into someone's house. I'll call the police," I blurted out in a mix of frustration and alarm, but my husband's reaction was far from what I expected. He smirked, a gesture I hadn't seen from him in a long time, his voice now low and icy. "You've become quite cheeky for a wife," he remarked coldly, his words cutting through the tension. "Cheeky? You're the one who's been ignoring me all this time. I'm not pleased with you suddenly showing up," I retorted, feeling the weight of his accusations bearing down on me. "Since when did you get so high and mighty? Don't let staying at your parents' house go to your head," he continued, his tone growing increasingly hostile. It was jarring to hear him speak so rudely, and I struggled to comprehend his sudden change in demeanor. As he continued to berate me, I felt a surge of anger rising within me. "All right, I've got something to say too. Why should I take the blame? This whole thing started because you decided to ignore me," I countered, my frustration reaching its peak. "Ha! Why are you so mad? Calm down, okay? I'm willing to forgive you now. Just come back home," he declared, his arrogance palpable. How can he act so high and mighty? I thought, incredulous at his audacity. "Forgive me? I don't need your forgiveness. To me, you're nothing more than a stranger now," I stated firmly, shocked by my own boldness. He looked utterly bewildered by my assertion. "A stranger? What are you talking about?" He spluttered in disbelief, his face flushing with anger once more. "Stop talking nonsense. You've been living leisurely at your parents' place for 6 months. Has it made you lose your mind? We're married, aren't we?" he protested vehemently. "If we're married, why didn't you bother to talk things out? You ignored me because you had issues with me, didn't you?" I shot back, refusing to back down. "Don't make assumptions. I never said any such thing. Pack your things now, we're going home," he commanded, his tone brooking no argument. "I've reached my limit. Why do I have to put up with this man's nonsense? He's so clueless about what's happened during these 6 months," I thought, growing increasingly frustrated by his refusal to acknowledge my perspective. "You're shouting and yelling, but do you know anything at all?" I challenged him, determined to make him see reason. "What do you mean, anything?" he demanded, his confusion evident. "Did you hear nothing from your mother?" I asked pointedly, ready to confront him with the truth. "I didn't hear anything. What are you talking about?" he questioned, his confusion apparent. "Really? You don't know a thing, huh? Let me enlighten you. Your mother brought over the divorce papers. They had your signature, and since I no longer wanted to be with you either, I signed them too," I explained, feeling a mix of relief and bitterness as I recounted the events. A month after I moved back into my parents' house, I received a call from his mother. She asked me to meet her at a nearby cafe. There she handed me a set of divorce papers bearing my husband's signature. I continued, recalling the unexpected turn of events. What does this mean?" he asked, his tone uncertain. "What does it mean? I heard from Jackson that you haven't come home, and you're not even communicating properly anymore," I replied, his mother's cold gaze mirroring his usual demeanor towards me. "So, Jackson asked you to give me these divorce papers," I clarified, a surge of joy filling me at the thought of finally being free from my husband's neglect. Oh yes, he did, she confirmed, her response affirming my newfound liberation. Understood. Then I'll sign the papers for the divorce, I stated firmly, eager to move forward with the dissolution of our failed marriage. The moment I received the signed divorce papers, I wasted no time in filing them at the family court, signaling the definitive end of our relationship. But as I made it clear to my ex-husband that we were divorced, his reaction was unexpected. No, that's not what it is. I gave the papers to reassure my mother, he protested, his sudden panic contrasting with his earlier indifference. I was dumbfounded by my ex-husband's response. So I didn't intend to file those divorce papers. They're invalid, he continued, his attempt to backtrack futile in the face of legal reality. If he had no intention of filing them, why did he sign them? I countered, growing increasingly frustrated by his refusal to acknowledge the gravity of the situation. Just so you know, I've already filed the papers at the family court. They can't be invalidated now, okay? I informed him, determined to assert my autonomy and move on from our failed marriage. But he persisted in his attempts to downplay the seriousness of the situation. You think just apologizing to the family court will take care of everything, huh? I'm willing to do it with you. You realize it'll be a real hassle if we go through with the divorce, right? He argued, his selfishness and refusal to accept reality exasperating me beyond measure. You know what? You're only thinking about yourself. We can't just pretend the divorce didn't happen, I retorted, refusing to entertain his delusions any longer. And I won't have any issues even if I split from you. Plus, I already have someone else, I added, his disbelief fueling my determination to move on and find happiness elsewhere. You're lying. You're just saying that because you don't want to come home, he accused, his denial of the truth emblematic of his inability to accept responsibility for his actions. It's not a lie. It's the truth, I asserted, feeling a sense of liberation as I finally spoke my truth. I won't forgive you, I declared firmly, despite the disbelief in my ex-husband's eyes. He could refuse to accept it all he wanted, but the truth remained unchanged. As I pondered how to make him understand, I sensed a presence behind me. Are you okay? My boyfriend's concerned voice cut through the tension, accompanied by raised voices from inside my parents' house. I'm okay. I'm sorry for worrying you, I reassured him, grateful for his support. My boyfriend, still unfamiliar with my ex-husband, looked on with curiosity. Emily, who is this guy? Do you know him? He asked, his protective instincts evident. That's my ex-husband, I replied, watching as my ex struggled to find his voice in the face of my boyfriend's imposing presence. Nice to meet you, my boyfriend greeted him, but my ex's response was noticeably uneasy. What exactly does your ex-husband want? Is he bothering you? My boyfriend questioned, his gaze unwavering. No, I'm not doing anything, my ex stammered, retreating from the confrontation. With firm resolve, I escorted my ex-husband out, confident that my boyfriend's presence had deterred him from returning. True to my expectations, he never showed up again. In the aftermath, his own actions and neglect had sealed his fate, culminating in the signing of the divorce papers. It was a testament to his foolishness and lack of foresight. A week later, prompted by my boyfriend's inquiry, I realized I had almost forgotten about my ex-husband. Curiosity piqued, I reached out to a mutual friend for an update. He hasn't been doing well since the divorce. He's really lost his spark, the friend revealed, shedding light on my ex-husband's downward spiral. Surprised by the news of his abrupt resignation from his job, I couldn't help but wonder about the sudden turn of events. It seemed his facade of taking care of his mother was just that, a facade. Despite the revelations, I couldn't find it in me to sympathize. His actions had led to this outcome, and now I was focused on building a happier future with my boyfriend. As a newly divorced woman, marriage wasn't on the cards immediately, but we planned to register next year. With proper communication and mutual respect, I hope to create the happy family I had always dreamed of.